In a previous study, I investigated the impact that Galen's De Naturalibus Facultatibus on the natural faculties had on early modern science and philosophy, and I focused in particular on medical text and commentary that expanded on this text of Galen. And in that essay that was published, I think, 3 years ago by Springer, I pointed out how this particular treatise dealing with the involuntary operations of the body became relevant in all sorts of discussions involving medicine, physics, and philosophy. Today, I would like to look at Galen's De Naturalibus Facultatibus as a text that provided the outlines for philosophical considerations of nutrition and growth. One author who during the Renaissance was certainly interested in Galen's theory of nutrition was Rabelais. He looked at it as a physician and a natural philosopher, but also, of course, as a storyteller of culinary excesses, dietary madness, and unnatural growth. There is indeed a philosophy in Gargantua and Pantagruel. The name is Pantagruelism. It mainly suggests a moral consideration of human affairs, a certaine gaieté d'esprit confit en mépris des choses fortuites, a certain gaiety of spirit confected in disdain for fortuitous things, as Rabelais explains in the prologue to Book 2. Pantagruelism is a blend of ideas taken from Democritus, Socrates, and Diogenes, but also a real cornucopia of joy and mockery. Humor, well-being, and a good state of health are an integral part of it. Sans santé, n'est la vie que langueur. Without health, understanding by health something more comprehensive than simply physical or even mental health, without santé, the result is apathy and enervation, langueur. If the core of Pantagruelism is moral, the foundations are medical and are to be found in appetite, food digestion, and the countless forms that greed takes on that greed in human life. Growth is intuitively associated with eating. Rabelais elaborates on this assumption in countless occasions. A rather traditional way of investigating abnormal growth from the Middle Ages on was to focus on giants and their exploits. I argue today that Galenic and indeed Hippocratic views on food, digestion, and evacuations influenced how Rabelais shaped his unique universe of giants. Still in the early modern period, gigantology, maybe the name is a bit fanciful, but I think we can actually speak of a real discipline dealing with the giants. So let's call it gigantology, was a discipline that at the intersection of mythography, biblical exegesis, and antiquarianism, investigated the natural and historical reasons behind the preternatural growth of living beings. Here I refer in particular to Walter Stevens' majestic Summa on early modern gigantology, the book published in 1989, Giants in Those Days, Folklore, Ancient History, and Nationalism. For Rabelais, a giant was the experimental, evident proof that nature is alive and has a power to expand its bounds. Here I would like to put forward a hypothesis, highly conjectural at this stage, that much rethinking over the Galenic, indeed Hippocratic notions of food and nutriment during the Renaissance fueled Rabelais' imagination concerning the anatomy and the lifestyle of giants. In particular, De Alimento, on food, on nutrition, which was a key Hippocratic text, already commented upon by Galen, could be read as an experimental platform for a cosmological program. One statement in that work was especially telling for many at the time, not simply Rabelais, but Cardano, Paracelsus, Helmont, and many others. This is the aphorism by Hippocrates, commented upon by also by Galen in his commentary on the Alimento. Nutriment is that which is nourishing. Nutriment is that which is fit to nourish. Nutriment is that which is about to nourish. Nutriment, the Greek is trophe, is that which is nourishing, to trephon. Nutriment, trophe, is also that which is fit to nourish. Oion, il to oion, that is such that can become nutritive. And finally, trophe is the tomellon, is that which is about to nourish. This is classic Hippocrates, a bit obscure but very pithy, dense, pregnant with meaning. Galen had mentioned this pithy Hippocratic definition of food in the Naturalibus Facultatibus, which is the treatise I am interested in particularly. And this is a quotation. This is the way Galen explained this aphorism by Hippocrates. To that which is already being assimilated, said Galen, Hippocrates gave the name of nutriment, trophe. To the similar material which is being added or becoming adherent, he gave the name of quasi-nutriment, the oion in the Greek word, the such that look as a nutriment, the something that as if as almost as nutriment. And finally, to everything else, Galen continues, that is everything that is contained in the stomach and veins, Hippocrates gave the name of that what is destined to become nutriment, tomellon trophe. This is the end of quotation. Galen's clarification captured the most original point in Hippocrates' position. Food is that which nourishes, and that's the first meaning. But it's also that which can be turned into something nourishing, a nourishing component. And finally, it can also be considered as the living body as a whole that is capable of nourishing itself. Indeed, however cryptic and obscure Hippocrates' pronouncements in this treatise may sound, in the Alimento, then the following aphorism number 9, I think is the logical consequence of such all-encompassing understanding of food. This is the quotation of Hippocrates' statement number 9 in the Alimento. The beginning of all things is one, and the end of all things is one, and the end and beginning are the same. End of quotation. So if nutrition is the process that distinguishes vital from inert states of matter, growth is the evidence that the universe is one living being capable of nourishing itself and therefore repairing and preserving itself. The universe, I might say, is one great giant organism. In keeping with these Hippocratic precedents, Galen, at the very outset of his work on the natural faculties of life, characterized growth and nutrition as the distinguishing feature of nature. And in particular, as is made clear in the very famous beginning of that treatise, the distinguishing feature of nature as contrasted with psyche, soul. The quotation of from the beginning of the treatise is growth and nutrition to auxanestai and to trephestai. Growth and nutrition are the effects of nature, not of soul. End of quotation. In addition, Galen assumes that there is a difference between growth and nutrition. They are not exactly the same. They are related, but they are not the same. And the reason is that growth presupposes quantitative expansion. The Greek word is diastasis, whereas nutrition occurs without expansion. Aneo-diastaseos. This means that, however correlated, eating and growing are different states of one living process. To better clarify the duality of nutrition and growth, Galen mentions a game that he says is popular among children in Ionia. They take bladders of pigs and repeatedly inflate and rub them until these reach the maximum extension that is compatible with the density of the matter involved. Galen continues, quotation, now clearly, in these games of children, the more the interior cavity of the bladder increases in size, the thinner necessarily does its substance becomes. But if the children were able to bring nourishment to this thin part, then they would make the bladder big in the same way that nature does. As it is, however, Galen continues, they cannot do what nature does, for to imitate this is beyond the power not only of children, but of anyone soever. It is a property of nature alone. End of quotation. So the wondrous property of nature of which Galen is talking about here is, to continue the quotation, to extend in every direction that which has already come into existence, that is to say, the solid parts of the bodies, the arteries, the veins, the nerves, and all the other parts of the body. For if such bodies were distended, but not at the same time nourished, they would take on a false appearance of growth, not a true growth. And further, to be distended in all direction belongs only to bodies whose growth is directed by nature. Thus nature, Galen concluded, nature alone has the power to expand a body in all directions so that it remains unruptured and preserve completely its previous form. This is Galen's of Antibes here. A body can be said to be natural growing as long as it is able to expand itself in all directions while maintaining its substance and form. But there are two types of natural limits in this theory of growth. One has to do with human technology, we might say, which for Galen is of a mechanical character and therefore cannot replicate the process of nutrition as the children's game clearly demonstrates. The second limit is internal to nature, has to do with the checks and balances that control the development of bodies in nature. Because in nature, according to Galen, there is a peak, acme. There is a peak in all physical things, natural things, both as kinds and as individuals. And overcoming these limits is to enter the domain of monstrous births, teratology. So within this theoretical framework, a giant is an unnatural body whose abilities are supported by apply and stretchability of matter in all directions. Technologically speaking, if we were capable of nourishing matter, as Galen said in the example of children, and children cannot nourish matter, as he said in his example, we could make giants, technologically speaking. In any case, in both cases, giants are not ordinary productions of nature for Galen. Anatomically speaking, nutrition, strepsis, require specific processes and organs. Galen's called this system of specific organs and processes the economy, that is the organization of nutrition. Caperitem, testrophes, or economia. Understanding for economia exactly this kind of system, organized system. The principal processes involved in this productive system are two. One is assimilation, exomoiosis, which, as the word that makes clear, homoiosis, exomoiosis, is a process through which something becomes like something else. This process of assimilation is in turn prepared by a process of addition, application, prosthesis, and one of adhesion, agglutination, prosthesis. So one is assimilation. The other important process to understand nutrition is, of course, evacuation. In fact, the economy of nutrition is much more complex because as there are countless types of food, so there are innumerable stages and above all, innumerable parts to be fed, because as Hippocrates, the Hippocratic authors in the Alimento said, every single part of a body can be considered as something to be nourished. So do not be surprised, says Galen, at the abundance of organs which nature has created for the purpose of nutrition. Growth and nutrition reveal the bountiful variety of nature and the adaptability of its tool, the organs, to the constantly changing circumstances of the environment. Galen says at this point, this then is one reason why there are so many organs concerned in the alteration of food. And the second reason, Galen confirmed, is the nature of the superfluities, the periptomatas. Both as we are unable to draw any nourishment from grass, this is an example that Galen makes here at a certain point, we cannot really feed on grass. Although this is possible for cattle, similarly, we can derive nourishment from radishes or other food, albeit not to the same extent as from meat. For almost the whole of the latter, meat, is mastered by our nature. It is transformed and altered and constituted as useful blood, and blood is the best probably food in the body. To go back to our quotation from the Alimento in Hippocrates, is the second meaning of food, of trophée. The oion trophée. So discernment, secretion, and excretion. I would almost be tempted to say discretion, secretion, and excretion, but I prefer discernment. Discretion is now means very different things, but it's a question of the root of these words is krino, to judge, to separate, to distinguish. But these are three different acts of distinguishing according to Galen. One is to distinguish what is good from what is bad for us, the useful from the noxious. The second is the absorption of food, the secretion, and finally, the evacuation, excretion. And these are the operations underlying the act of assimilation, of being the same while becoming partially similar to the ingested food. The exomoiosis, let's remind us of ourselves, is precisely the central act of nutrition, assimilation, to become like. Galen points out that there are limits in absorbing food. He ruled out, as we have seen, that humans should eat grass. We just read the quotation. By contrast, starting from Galenic premises, Rabelais explored the limits of omnivoracity, if I can say this in English, omnivoracity. This is where Rabelais starts as the dazzling singer of giants and their deeds in his capacity as both a Galenic doctor, but also as a playful scholar, after the example of Erasmus and Thomas More. Eating and growing go hand in hand in Rabelais' view not only because its fictional world is populated with giants. Panurge, which is one of the characters, is also not a giant, is the friend of Pantagruel. Panurge sees as central to the organization of his estate, of his mansion, that is in the story a gift, a very important gift from Pantagruel. He sees as central to the economy of his estate. His estate, really, it's a matter of economy in the Aristotelian, Xenophontian old meaning of household management. One of the central points, ironically, playfully, of this oikonomia is to eat wheat when it's still grass, which seems a bit irrational. But he says, one of the things I'm very proud in the way I organize my estate is that I don't wait for wheat to be harvested, because I eat wheat when it's still grass. It is a form of ascetic discipline, he says, but in line with the principle of Rabelais' Pantagruelism, with Rabelais' gaieté d'esprit, cheerfulness. Panurge's asceticism consists in eating everything that is edible and in squandering any other source of income and energy. Nothing is wasted because everything is eaten. He brings the example at a certain point of Thomas Aquinas, who ate up a whole lamprey. We are in book 3 of Pantagruel. Pantagruel has donated a mansion, as I said, to Panurge, and the property and the use that Panurge makes of it is for Rabelais the opportunity for singing the praises of becoming indebted, to going into debt. Thomas Linacre, in his 1523 translation of Galen's De Naturalibus Facultatibus, had summed up the economy of nutrition with the Latin statement, nutrimenti cum nutrito assimilatio, assimilation of that which nourishes to that which is nourished, which is another way of referring to the Hippocratic virtuous circle of self-nutrition in nature as theorized in the Hippocratic De Alimento. For Panurge and Rabelais, the universe is alive precisely because its economy rests on a relationship in which the debits, credits, transactions are constantly being settled in the double-entry bookkeeping of life. No hunger, no waste, or which for Panurge and Rabelais is the same, all dissipation, all appetite. In Rabelais' world, people do not simply eat. They are voracious because they literally everything, all that is. Panurge said that he eats wheat in the blade, but far from being a sign of deprivation, this kind of militant omnivoracity is a symptom of thriving and flourishing. Eating is the primordial act constitutive of wealth and prosperity because it establishes an essential bond of vital reciprocity between debere, to owe, debit, and credere, to entrust credit in the universe. This bond underpins all natural and social transactions. Rabelais' cosmos is the very refutation of any model of self-sufficient stasis. Ironically, but significantly, that is characterized in Platonic terms as the soul of the universe. Through Panurge's mouth, Rabelais said that the universe is held together by a network of mutual obligations. The sun would stop shedding its light on the earth, and the earth would not nourish the sun and the other stars with its vapors if the beings of nature decided to disentangle themselves from the Galenic law of discernment, secretion, and discretion. Panurge explains that eating grass reinvigorates human life in all its aspects, from the belly to the brain. And there are very actually funny passages in this part of the book 3 of Gargantua and Pantagruel, especially the one in chapter 2, 3, and 4. And I'll give you a little bit of an example of this from Wheat in the Blade. This is Panurge speaking. You make nice green sauce, simple to concoct and easy to digest, which refreshes your brain, cheers your animal spirits, rejoices your sights, opens up your appetite, delights your taste, fortifies your heart, tickles your tongues, brightens your color, strengthens your muscles, tempers your blood, revives your diaphragm, freshens your liver, unstops your spleen, relieves your kidney, purges your bladder, lulls your loins, limbers up your vertebrae, empties your ureters, dilates your spermatic vessel, tightens up your cremasters, cleans out your bladders, fills up your genitals, straightens your foreskin, encrusts your gland, erects your member, gives you a good belly, makes you do things well, makes you do things well. Eating grass makes you do things well. And I stop here because, as you know, Rabelais can continue with lists and lists of other operations and aspects. Rabelais's narrative appropriation, the Galenic theory of growth and nutrition, which he uses to create his world of cheerfully eating, digesting, and evacuating giant, is made possible by his Socratic leanings towards Erasmus' praise of double entendre and More's utopianism. And to approach my conclusion, I would say that, at least for me, I think that Rabelais' stroke of genius, fictionally, but also philosophically, seriously philosophically, the stroke of genius lies in the way in which he grafted the principle of Plato's Socratic irony onto the body of the Galenic theory of natural and digestive powers. In the prologue to Gargantua, Rabelais compared the silence described by Plato's Symposium to the marrow inside a bone coveted by a dog. Is a famous simile. This substantific marrow, as he calls it, is the food elaborated to perfection. And there is here a playful reference, of course, to Book 3 of Galen's De Naturalibus Facultatibus. It is a sort of grafting, a combination, because it is in fact eros cum epithymia, love cum appetite, Silenus with a dog. This combination is especially evident in the episode of Messer Gaster, which is interesting because it's the conclusion of Book 4. Book 5, we are expert historians. I'm not sure where Book 5 is truly Rabelaisiano, but at the end of Book 4, there is a really wonderful episode in which the center is this Messer Gaster, who is the ruler of a utopian island, which is all about carrying out gastric and culinary functions. And Messer Gaster is the Greek for stomach, belly. It's Cerbelli. Cerbelli is the master, the first master of arts in the world, is the great technician. It's a sort of Elon Musk of today. Technological invention and human wealth are associated with the lower faculties of the body, the stomach in particular, because the appetite, not the intellect, is the source of ingenuity. In this case, too, Rabelais originally rearranges mythological lineages in such a way that Platonic Lady Penia and Lord Porus, Lord of Abundance, you might remember Penia and Porus as the mythological parents of Eros, love, in the Symposium, Lady Penia and Lord Porus of Abundance are presented as parents of Eros, but they are now parts also of the entourage of Messer Gaster. In line with the cry, their battle cry is all for the cat, pour la tripe, pour la tripe. It's a recurring cry. So to conclude, Galen's De Naturalibus Facultatibus is centered on the complementary but different processes of growth and nutrition. That is, on the difference but close relationship between physical extension and persistence of identity. There is a certain level of tension between the two in Galen's treatment, between nutrition and growth. Unlike Plato and Aristotle, Galen does not refer to the soul to explain life. The balanced counterpoint of nutrition and growth, of identity and matter, is based on a complex process of self-accommodation to the varying conditions of nature. It is crasis in Greek, temperamentum in Latin. One may say that Rabelais betrays the spirit of Galen's theory of growth and nutrition when he chronicles the adventures of Gargantua and Pantagruel, because he dispenses with the very idea of natural limits. In fact, I think that Rabelais is very close to the program of Galenic anatomy in the way in which he attributes to the bodies the power to rule themselves through the primordial actions of nature, the natural faculties, discretion, secretion, excretion. Nutrition is a selective process by means of which what can be assimilated is discerned and separated from what resists assimilation. This kind of discerning ability is what Galen in the Naturalibus Facultatibus calls life, and is on a different level than the type of discernment based on the function of sense perception and the soul. Thank you for your attention.